Hoje a gente tem um bate-papo muito especial com dois perfumistas maravilhosos da IFF, que é uma das maiores empresas de fragrância do mundo e é responsável por todos os desenvolvimentos maravilhosos da Santapele. A IFF tem perfumistas que fazem assim perfumes incríveis, imperdíveis e best-sellers, historicamente falando. Se você vai no Museu de Grasse, na França, você vê todos os perfumes que a IFF desenvolveu e eles trazem muita expertise para o trabalho deles. Então é com muito, muito prazer que eu tenho aqui hoje com a gente o Yves Cassar e o Christian Alori para fazer um bate-papo sobre as nossas fragrâncias. O Yves que criou o Salve São Paulo, e o Christian Alori, que supervisiona todo o desenvolvimento do Salve Rio também. Eu vou falar em inglês com eles e vamos ter aqui as nossas traduções. Christian and Yves, welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you
So much
Pleasure
for
to
being
be here with
here.
you.
It's such a pleasure having you guys give your precious time to talk with us. And Christian and Yves, I'd like to ask a little bit about first your experience coming in. Why choose this career? It's a very special career. I learned from IFF there are less perfumers in the world than astronauts. Wow. And I found that number astonishing. It's such a special career you choose. Will you please, let's start with Yves. How did you get into it, Yves?
So I was, from south of France. I'm in Nice, and my family was living there for quite a while. And I did my college studies in Nice University in biology and chemistry. And at the end, they were connected to Grasse. I knew in Grasse they used to produce fragrances when I used to live in Nice, but that was about it. But through my university, they asked me to see maybe a company in Grasse who was making fragrances, and they need somebody to run the analytic lab. So I went there, and I was very intrigued, and I work in the lab. And we used to get all the oil from the world and do the analysis for purity, for grades. So we used to buy or reject different lots based on certain criteria. So that was my exposition to the natural oils, what I was smelling and analyzing. And after that, I was intrigued. I said, what's next? So I don't want to stay in the lab. And I got the connection with the perfumer. I start meeting the perfumer in Grasse, and it was very interesting in what they were doing. After I used to do the analysis, I used to talk to them. Why do you use lavender? What do you use bergamot? So I was very intrigued. And I started training with a group of perfumers in Grasse at that time. And I was very intrigued. And obviously I was smelling very well because we did different testing. We smell different accords. So it was a great training for me. And before really being into the perfumer, let's say, training, I used to work also in a department where we used to recreate natural oils. So we used to recreate a bergamot, a lavender, a patchouli. For some customers, they were all over the world, they couldn't afford the natural product because it was too expensive. So I used to do a lot of reconstitution of natural oil for India, for different parts of the world, for Egypt, for everywhere in the world, or they couldn't afford, but it was for me a great training to understand the inside of the natural, inside out, for the analysis and through the different technology that we have to identify some constituent in oil. So it was a great training. So I ended up there because of my chemistry background. And after that, I was very happy to move into really the creative part of the business. Nice. And I moved after that for a merge. I moved to the US in 84, working for a company in the US, and I joined IFF in 98.
Wow, so it's been 23 years you've been with IFF.
Exactly.
That's incredible. Wow, and what about you, Christian? How did you get into it?
For me, it's I'd have to say it's a two-part story. The how I got into this. The first part would have to be when I was really young. I was a kid. All my family's from Argentina,
Yes.
from Buenos Aires, and I was born in New York. So me and my parents and my brother were in New York when every couple of years we'd have a cousin of mine come visit New York, and she was a bit older than me. She was a couple of years older than me, and she would come with a pretty long list of perfumes to buy in New York and bring back to Argentina. So I would go shopping with her. I would go fragrance shopping, and there she was loving going to do this shopping, and we'd smell a lot of fragrances, and I was so yeah, I was pretty young, and I was just starting to really get into smelling fragrances while shopping with my cousin. We smelled a lot of Jardin de Bagatelle, Coros, many of the classics today. And so I would say it was like an introduction to perfumery through my cousin. And then fast forward around 10 years later, the second part to this story would have to be, it was during a class where it was a psychology class where the professor of the class really had a hard time with the discipline of the students. So to get our attention and be able to give the class, he would tell some kind of story or something interesting. So we'd be, on point and begin to listen to him and the class. And one of the things he said one day was about a friend of his who was a perfumer, who had just come back from a trip, a vacation in Chile, and he gave a lot of description of where he was. He was in a cave, and he felt all like these earthy and damp smells, and he came back inspired from his vacation, and he created a perfume based on his vacation. And I was blown away by this story. I thought, wow, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. I want to learn more. That's where there was the initial spark there to really pursue and learn more about how perfumes are created, who creates them, who are these characters, who are the perfumers that behind these classic fragrances that I knew, and what inspired them to create those classics. So I went on like a big investigation, to learn, and there I began to study. I was living in Argentina at that time. My family had moved to Argentina, and there I began to study a 2-year course of introduction to perfumery, and parallel to that, I worked in a small fragrance house in Buenos Aires, and I did that in parallel for 3 years. And when that was, when I finished my studies and I learned as much as I could with the work, I basically sold a few of my things, saved some money, and I moved back to New York to try to get into one of these big fragrance houses where I knew I wanted to meet the perfumer. I knew I wanted to get to the perfumer, and I tried, and within a few months I got my foot in one of the doors, and in that door happens to be IFF, and I got in, and I met Yves, I met Sofia Grossman, I met Carlos Benavides.
And we worked together. Yes,
fantastic characters that I was very, very fortunate to begin to compound way fragrances, their formulas, and as a lab assistant, as a perfumer's assistant, and of course, I was already in love with this way before that. But yeah, that's the story behind
fantastic
falling in love with perfumery.
I'm falling in love since I started working with Santapele, and IFF showed me a little bit of this world. I think it's an incredible world, and I always wonder this is something I believe, but I wanted to ask you guys, it's like, can you train your nose, or is it like a talent, you either have it or you don't? Because, for example, when my brother is into wine and he does the wine tasting, he talks about all these nuances, and when I smell the wine, I cannot get as deep for example, as him. With the perfumery too, I've done fragrance trips with IFF in Paris, in New York, and they've taken me to many experiences. I've even visited an experience that Yves created. It was fantastic in their offices in New York. And I wonder if how deep can you train yourself?
I think a lot of people have a very good sense of smell, but they are not in this field. And after with practice, you learn how to smell so many raw material, to identify them, recognize them. Sometimes you don't recognize right away a product, but if you go through an image that is comfortable, if it smells green, maybe you say it smells like a pea green, and you say, okay, that's galbanum. Sometimes you have to pass through a step to discover the odor. Sometimes it comes right away to you, but there is different way to practice. But again, a lot of people are good sense of smell, but they are not in this field, and they could be also great perfumer. But we are lucky to be in this field, and I love this field. And for the story, it's going back in time for me. I'm born in North Africa, in Algeria. And my grandmother used to have a beautiful garden. And I remember, and I have picture when I was a kid, 5, 6 years old, always being in the garden, smelling what she has in the garden. The rose, the jasmine, orange flower. I was always smelling things. So it's a good memory. But maybe through that time, I don't know what happened, but I end up being a perfumer, and that's a beautiful story for me.
You started practicing very young, Yves.
Yes, exactly. So
you didn't know, but you're already working.
No, exactly. But I was always passionate with naturals, especially with naturals. I work in naturals. We have a company in Grasse called LMR, and we develop a lot of natural. I'm involved in new development for IFF, and that's really what I love. And I think that's helped me a lot was my time spending in Grasse also working on reconstitution of natural. So that's when you feel really for the natural product that you are in your hand.
I visited LMR. It's so beautiful there. It's so beautiful. I loved finding out about this.
Especially when you get a chance to see the from the beginning. You see the crop, the flower goes into the distillation process. It's really it's fantastic to be able to see that.
I didn't visit the crops at the time. I could only visit the production area, but it's something that I need to go back for.
Yeah, you need to go back. If you go in May, you should have the crop for the narcisse in Lozère, beautiful area, and you see the process there. And in Grasse also, if you are in February, that's the crop for the mimosa. So you have all the mimosa coming from the area. So it's really fresh and distilled right away on the premise.
Great. Okay.
So you need to have more trip now.
For sure. I'm dying to travel. And tell me, Christian, but so I'm still not clear. So you think somebody can train and can practice then? You said that's something that, for example, if I decide to now. But what if somebody has a?
I think it's a matter of it's not so much a high sensibility, no, it's more about just the practice, the work, the day to day, and the trial and the error, and the really study, the deep focus and study of the raw materials. So it's not that you need to be like a highly sensitive person or have a fantastic great sense of smell to become a great perfumer. Of course, this helps. There are people with a great, more acute sense of smell, but I think it's the minority. You can have a Maradona, a Pelé, or a Zidane. I'll put Zidane in there, Yves. Who are out of the ordinary, and that really out of the ordinary. But in general, it's about the practice. It's about the day-to-day work. And
it's practice, I think, and also your creativity, how you blend those things together. You may have some people may blend differently than the other perfumer, and every perfumer smells differently. So everybody has his own cachet.
Yves, you guessed my next question. I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about the artistry of combining the fragrances, because that's really where the secret lies, right? It's like creating like the magic of like the nuances of where do you draw inspiration? Tell me a little bit about the process for you, and then for you, Christian.
But the inspiration, so it's coming, usually we get a brief from our customer, and they lay out the premise for the fragrance. We have the texture, the tone, the color, if it's a fragrance for daytime, nighttime, or all day long. So we have a lot of brief, and that's why we get the inspiration. But usually also the inspiration for me is when, like you say before, maybe traveling and you catch something that you smell. It's happened to me in Morocco, being in vacation in Morocco, and I was on the terrace of the restaurant. It's a famous restaurant called La Mamounia in Marrakesh.
Yes, I've been there.
They've been there. So I was for breakfast, and I was smelling something in the air. I say, wow, it's very strong. I love this. It's very fresh. It looks like orange flower. It smells like it in the air, but it's not orange flower. So I went in the garden, and I saw this gardener was around the garden, and I said, what's that tree? It looks like orange flower, but I told me, no, it's a grapefruit tree. So I said, I never saw the grapefruit oil. They never made oil on the grapefruit, except from the peel. We have grapefruit oil, but not from the flower. So I was very intrigued by that. I took some flowers, I was smelling. And during the course of the work, later on, working on the Tom Ford project, the original Tom Ford for Men, I brought the idea, what about, because he liked freshness, I said, what about this grapefruit flower? Maybe it could be interesting. So it was interesting, and I found a company in Morocco and to distill the grapefruit flower for us. So we got the oil. It was great. It smelled different from the orange flower. It's very fresher, ozonic note, and that was being introduced to Tom Ford and in the development of the fragrance. So this inspiration came from my trip in Morocco. Working directly on the brief, maybe I will never have this idea. I'm pretty sure. So it was a great experience. So I think that's what the creativity of a perfumer comes from, something you come across traveling or being in your garden or whatever, at the beach, or you will find some notes that floating around that catch your nose.
Fantastic. And what about, before I move to Christian, I want to ask you about this little baby. How did you draw the inspiration for Salve São Paulo, it's such a success here in Brazil. Everybody loves it. And when people come say hello to me, and I'm like, Salve São Paulo.
That's cool.
It's very woody, right? Yeah. It's got jasmine, sandalwood, and tell me a little bit about inspiration.
The inspiration came also being quite a few times in your hotel in Sao Paulo. And I like the wood structure that you have. You have different tones like beige and darker woods. I was in a suite at one point for a few days also, and it's a darker wood. And so when you come with this idea to develop a fragrance, I was thinking about the sandalwood note for this kind of calming effect, because it's very calming and relaxing in your hotel. And also the woodiness, the texture with like cedar wood. So you have sandalwood, cedar wood. The freshness of the wood also, working with vetiver, give this fresh wood effect. But because it's not only calming and sensual atmosphere in your place, you have also a sense of energy and freshness. So for that, the idea was to use the cardamom. I love this product because it gives you a very fresh, spicy note, very modern and sleek. So that's the combination of freshness. And as always, because it's more like a scent also, I love to work with a floral note in a men's or women's fragrance, of course, but in a men's or genderless fragrance. And I introduce some jasmine, like we have sambac in the fragrance from India and jasmine from India.
Wow, it's a perfect combo. It's a very successful, and it's genderless, and the beauty of it is maybe combined with the Rio, which we're going to talk a little bit soon. So Christian, tell me a little bit about your creative process. Then, how do you find inspiration? And
sure. Well, first in the first part of the creative process, really it's going back to what we said before about the real work day to day and getting to know the materials before being able to mix them and combine them and find synergies, you know, between them. So really it's a long process of training, you know, of smelling the materials, getting to know them, and then yes, we begin to combine them. And then in the sense of inspiration, I draw inspiration from many different things. I mean, a lot of things like what Yves said, it can be like a traveling experience, you know. Traveling is always a great source of inspiration. It can be a piece of music, a painting, anything that at some point or another shakes my ground, you know, like something that really surprises me or leaves me with a strong impression. It can be very abstract, but I'll somehow find a way to bring it down and bring it into, with the materials that I know, bring it to a fragrance. So yeah, it's a wide variety of things that we can draw inspiration from.
Nice. And how are you finding inspiration for Salve Rio?
For Rio, I love Rio. I'm a big fan of Rio. I was there this past weekend, actually.
Oh,
and yes, and I think that, you know, for the fragrance, you know, for Rio de Janeiro, we have to talk about elements of color, you know, and big, sunny, bright, freshness, joyful, you know, and I think these elements are expressed in the fragrance. Mainly if we smell, you know, you're going to find a lot of, it's a big citrus, you know, accord. We have a lot of mandarin, bergamot, grapefruit, lemon, you know, and this is contrasted with some very smooth woods. And I like to think that the woods, I like to think like of a bossa vibe to the fragrance, because for me, bossa is a bit like, you know, that very smooth connection between jazz and a samba, no? But it's very smooth for me. It's very chill. It's not so robust and jagged. So we have some of the woods in the fragrance that are, you know, we have cashmeran, which is an IFF ingredient, but we also have some patchouli heart, LMR. So it's, as Yves said before, LMR is where we draw most of our naturals from. And this is a particular ingredient of the patchouli oil that's been treated by fractional distillation, and we take out most of the harsh, robust things that are part of patchouli and can be an attractive side to patchouli oil, but we're left with a much more cleaner and smoother surfaced patchouli. And this is what's used in the fragrance, and I think it translates well with that element of bossa, no?
Yes.
And so yeah, we're talking about a lot of color, freshness, and the people,
exuberance.
the cariocas, you know, the characters, os cariocas são demais. I love the cariocas.
E parabéns pela Copa América.
That's why I was in Rio.
We love Argentina, Yves, on soccer.
You are lucky to see it live, right?
I was so lucky. Yeah. I was so lucky to get in the Maracanã. Yes, but it was fantastic.
You were there?
Yes.
Oh my God!
I got it. Wow. It was a great ordeal to get in. It wasn't an easy task to get a ticket, you know, a credential to be able to get into the stadium, but I was able to get it, and oh my God, what a beautiful feeling. See, that's another thing. I come back from Rio this past weekend, and I'm making a fragrance inspired on that.
Oh my God! You have no excuses, Christian.
The Argentina campeón of Copa America in Rio. We have different elements in that. We have a little bit of leather for the ball, you know. We have a Malbec accord that I have from Argentina side. And we have a little bit of a solar beach with a lot of citrus and things to contemplate the Rio side.
All right, I understand now. I think I'm gonna change professions. It sounds way too much fun what you guys do. You travel and you make some beautiful products. It's like a dream career for me. Well, I want to thank you so much for allowing, to be part of this talk. I know there's so much more to learn and discover in the perfumery world, but we'll go little by little on homeopathic doses here.
Yes.
Thank you again for, being part of my Salve perfumes. I want to show the boxes because the magic was that they can be used together. So we have here the Salve Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, where the name of the
so cool.
That's join. Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And the name Salve is for Salve, the name.
Salve is a saudação. It's a salute. To Salve can mean to save, but also to salute. Okay. And so we are saluting the cities. So we're saluting São Paulo. And so it's like to say salute to each city. And we hope to expand in new cities. And we hope we can, talk about our future projects together, organize those Brazilian trips.
Yes, but I guess you have to open more hotels.
Oh, that's on the way. Don't worry, we have it. We have it, Yves. Get ready.
We have some more. Good. So can't wait to see the new one so we can work together again.
For sure. And it will be a pleasure to have both of you with us anytime. So thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Carolina.
Thank you so much.
Christian. Thank you all.
Tchau, Yves.
Thank you.
Ciao. Abraço. Tchau. Thank you.
Good luck, Messi.